Welcome back, everybody, and thanks for, of course, choosing to come back and join us for the rest of the afternoon. I'm going to take the opportunity now to introduce Samantha Pickering. Samantha, when I asked her how she wanted me to introduce her, said, tell people I'm a spy, a woman of international intrigue and mystery. So without further ado, let's hear from Samantha, who's going to be talking to us about the risk associated with a toxic culture. Samantha.
Good morning, everybody. I would like to first thank you all for coming out. We really do appreciate the support and the turnout here today, and as well to our people online. So as Peter alluded to, I'm here to talk to you today about the impacts of toxic culture, both in a professional and a personal sense. So to give you a little bit of context here, as Dave likes to refer to, I was offered a position, and at that point I was bright-eyed and very excited to take it on. I had an indication of some of the behaviours that I was going to be walking into, and I still was very ambitiously eager to take that on. What I walked into, however, was not what I was prepared for. I walked into a culture of excessive competitiveness. I walked into displaced aggression. I walked into cherry-picking leads. Now, these are all common behaviours that are seen in toxic sales cultures, but some of the behaviours are also seen in other departments. Now, we only get one opportunity to set a standard. Then we have to maintain that standard each and every time it is tested. And another thing that Dave says is that the standard we walk past is the standard we accept. And unfortunately, I walked past some standards. So these are some lessons that I have to take personal responsibility for, because although I inherited that toxic culture, I was not able to resolve it the way that I had envisioned. So some of the things that I need to take responsibility for in the mistakes that I made was I set myself unrealistic expectations. And there is one that that I've heard before about unrealistic expectations, and what it says is that if you set unrealistic expectations, you're actually premeditating resentment. So you're setting yourself up to resent and regret the situation you're in. The other thing was that I had something to prove. I felt like I had to prove that as the female that was being offered an opportunity, the only female that had ever been offered the opportunity in that business, in a male-orientated business, that I was the one that was going to lay the path for everybody else following behind me. So I wanted to prove that just because I was a girl didn't mean I couldn't do it. But that meant I was taking things on and maybe had a little bit of a chip on my own shoulder, because I was coming in there that I was the one that was going to take this all on. I was the one that was going to fix this, and I wasn't willing to put up my hand and ask for the help when I really needed it. And then we step into imposter syndrome. So I had gone from being the big fish in a little pond to being the small fish in a big pond. And I wasn't sure if I belonged, because everybody around me, and well, maybe they weren't thinking that, but in my head, they were like, well, can she? Can she do this? Can a girl do this job? This is a male-dominated industry. Does she have what it takes? And all the time, those thoughts were running through my head, and they were only fueling my own self-doubt. And what I learned from that was that self-doubt was actually undermining my authority. That self-doubt was bringing my own level of respect from my peers and from my employees down. And this is what led to the fact that I was then repeating myself when I was setting boundaries and setting instructions and asking for things to be done. So instead of them being done first time, I was having to ask again. And each time I didn't maintain that boundary, each time that I did ask again, it was getting worse. So those laxed boundaries, because of that imposter syndrome, meant that the culture that I inherited, instead of being able to turn it around and make it get better, got worse. Some of those impacts happened both in the work environment and at home. What you have here is an image of my son. This is what he looked like every afternoon when I would pick him up. He was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed. My entire family was overwhelmed. So the impact was happening at home, and the impact happening at work had actually more financial ramifications. At work, when you are a leader of a sales team and the team is growing a toxic culture, you are not generating the results. You are not hitting targets. And that financial impact hit me to the tune of $50,000. That hit me to the tune of $50,000. What it hit the business was far in excess of that. Now, what we have here as well is that people admit, 7 out of 10 is around about the number, that when they have got stress at work, it impacts their family life as well. That's because when we walk through that door, we can't just shut our emotions off. There may be the illusion that what happens at home stays at home, you're here at work now, but the truth is your mind's somewhere else. Both when you come home, when you bring the stresses from work to home, your mind is somewhere else. And when your mind is somewhere else, you're not present and you're not able to perform and deliver in the way that is best for the people that you're around at that moment. I mentioned before about the $50,000 impact it had on me, but on a business themselves, having a toxic employee has financial implications just by the one employee. More than $5,300 of cost savings if you're able to move people when you need to. And that's the other thing that I need to take responsibility for, because although I inherited the team, if I wasn't willing to fire the people who needed to be moved on, I might as well take the responsibility as if I was the one that hired them myself. Because for as long as I allowed them to stay in that business and do the damage, I was the one that was responsible for those outcomes. So I really want people to think on the financial implications that it's having in your business if you are not having those hard and honest conversations that need to be had. If you are not delivering the training and the support and the resources that are necessary to prevent toxic cultures from existing in your businesses, then what is the follow-on effect of those financial implications in the business to your personal lives? And are you willing to take those implications on? So then I want to look at why we don't hold boundaries. I've alluded about the imposter syndrome and that's one of the reasons why I didn't hold boundaries. The things that I wanted to prove and the fact that I wasn't putting my hand up to the EAP, the HR, the IR, the legal, and external leadership training. Resources that were always available then, but I was blind to. Even putting up effective communication and conflict policies and procedures, setting any level of boundaries can help when you're trying to change that circumstance around, which I'm sure Peter can allude to further in his role. So what I did learn from all of those mistakes in my business when I was in that role are some varied KPIs, some alternate strategies to use in how you actually view your employees, how you reward your employees, and what activities you want to be focusing on in order to get a better result. Because if you're only focusing on the outcomes, the objectives, the lag results that occur, you're going to miss on the activities that need to happen within the team that is what creates the cohesion, what creates the collaboration, and what creates the positive culture that is needed to sustain crisis and risk that we're facing right now. So what I have is lost customer feedback, where I've mentioned I wasn't willing to put my hand up. I needed to be the model and the leader that was willing to put my hand up and ask where I'd gone wrong, because I needed my team to put their hand up and ask their clients where they'd gone wrong. Why did they lose the deal? Assisted sales. The opposite of excessive competitiveness is teamwork, helping your team members to make the sale. What can you do, and how can you reward when a team member actually does assisted sales? In basketball, in rugby league, in these other sports, they have assisted. They'll be able to tell you the assisted tackle rate. They'll be able to tell you the assisted score rate. Why don't we do that in business? Why don't we look at the assisted sales? Referral business gained. If your employees are doing such an excellent job that their clients that they deliver directly to are going out and bringing in and becoming advocates and ambassadors for your business and bringing in more people, those numbers should be reflected and recognised in your employees because they've obviously delivered high quality service. Interdepartmental introductions. Often, my role is within sales. So what I'm speaking to here today is heavily within how I helped within a sales department. But as a strategic overview, the whole of the business needs to work. And in order for the whole of the business to work, after the sale is made, the rest of the business needs to be engaged in the client's end-to-end journey. And the way that that is succeeded is with interdepartmental introductions. If you build relationships with people, you transfer that rapport, and you pass on that trust, that shared trust that you've already established into the other departments that are then going to have to continue to deliver the services for those clients. So interdepartmental introductions is another measure that I recommend. Innovative solutions, like we've done here today. The innovative solutions that we have had to come up with in the adaptability and flexibility based on the change that we weren't in control of the change outside of us, but we were in control of the change that we needed to manage in order to continue to deliver this for everybody watching at home today. How can you reward your teams for innovative solutions and when they actually handle and are resilient when change is faced? And exercise and sleep. It may seem like an odd one. How as a business owner, how as a boss, do you measure and reward on exercise and sleep? We have technology. We have Fitbits. We have recommendations that we can say. We can even just ask our employees, hey, did you get much sleep last night? What's going on here? So recognizing there, what I have underneath all of them is the opposite effect that we're trying to work away from. So if you've got unrelenting standards and you're not getting sleep, you're going to end up in burnout. So what we want to do is reward the opposites. Because if we want to create a new positive habit, we've got to be able to help people to see the desired state and choose those habits to have that state change. So what I want you to also look at here is for yourself, and take away the word sales if that's not applicable to your team, but look at a team health check and ask yourself these questions. Is your team willing to learn and try new things? Is there a department-wide strategy that evolves as things change? Is the sales department aligned with other departments such as marketing, services? That's a part of that interdepartmental introductions. Are sales representatives empowered and self-motivated? Or are they dependent on you? Because if your team is dependent on you and you're making complaints, they're always asking me for solutions, you need to take a look in the mirror. Because if somebody is always asking you for solutions, what I learnt there is that I was micromanaging. If they're always coming to me, it's because I'm always giving to them. You've got to be able to have that boundary again and push it back. Is there transparency evident at every level? Is there honesty, that real, raw honesty that I was saying, those conversations that I needed to have with the team members who needed to have them, that needs to be able to follow through. I think Neil mentioned earlier today about was he being the person that allowed his team to feel comfortable in being honest with him and telling him what's really happening? That's what we're talking about with transparency at every level. And it is honest and open feedback and expectation. If you underperform, are you expecting to hear that feedback? Are you knowing that there's somebody else going to be checking on you? Because there is one saying, and I won't get it right word for word, but it's about how we behave when we think we're being watched. When we think we're being watched, we take actions that are just a little bit of a higher standard than we think we're going to get away with something. You know, the police have released that they're not doing random birth testing, and everybody's like, should they have announced that? Are we going to perform? My sat nav tells me that there's a red light camera and speed camera coming up, and I always think when she says that, I wasn't going to go through that red light anyway, but thank you. But I want to know that if you are able to actually say to your team, I noticed when it went wrong and I noticed when it went right, they know that they're being watched. And that is, in that subtle way, holding that standard right there. Does anybody have any examples or anything else that they wanted to contribute to relevance from what I've been talking here today that's going on in their teams?
I once had integrity described to me as it's your actions when people aren't looking.
Yes.
It's one person's definition of it, and I kind of like it. I mean, I have a slightly different version of integrity. In fact, it's right behind you on that wall. But I think it's a really important point because, you know, it's what you're doing when people are not watching. And I think one of the leadership characteristics that stands true through the test of time is how you represent your staff in forums where they cannot represent themselves.
Yep.
And how are they representing you in forums where you cannot represent yourself? And I think when that's working, it's a truly addictive feeling. You know, being in a team that you know they've got your back. And I know Jono once said, you know, about a question about, you know, getting knives in the back, and he goes, we don't take knives in the back because one of us takes it to the chest. And it just resonated with me with what you were saying.
Yeah, sense of belonging. Yep. Anybody else? No? So the lessons that I have for myself was hiring the wrong people and incentivizing the wrong behaviours leads to a toxic culture. Attempting to manage a difficult situation without outside assistance can lead to disaster, both personally and professionally. And let go of impostor syndrome, because all it's doing is undermining your authority. It undermines your ability to perform in the here and now, and it undermines your potential for what you have for tomorrow. That's what I have.
So it's always really interesting to get a very specific and departmentally led conversation around culture, and sales cultures are very overt and provide great examples. Thank you, Samantha.